thank you everyone for joining. I'm sure more will join here as time goes on. Um, this month in cybersecurity, the goal of this episode, if you will, is always to kind of convey what's been going on in the news and take those actionable takeaways back to our organizations to either help them protect or detect, respond to events that are happening, right? If it's happening to them, you don't want it happening to you typically. This is probably our 60th episode, if you will, of this month in cyber. We've been doing this a while, and we've got an agenda this month that kind of is a carryover, if you will, from last month a little bit. We had spoken kind of generically about cybersecurity insurance and the impact it was having and what we were seeing with our customer base in terms of self-assessments and so forth. Thought we'd bring in some experts. So for the first time, I think in all 60 episodes, we've got some guest speakers. So I'll be introducing here shortly. But as part of our agenda, they'll be discussing their insights into cybersecurity insurance and some of the challenges organizations are having with regards to either getting insurance, renewing insurance, and so forth. Obviously, as is typical, I will be covering some of the ransomware things that had occurred, maybe some updates on stories we've done before, just things that kind of popped up this month, right? That probably are things you should be aware of. So with that, let me just give a little bit of background to kind of set the stage, if you will. As we always discuss, right, we've got the NIST cybersecurity framework as kind of a basis for things. And one of the things you're going to find, and one of the things I've certainly mentioned often over these last 5 years, is the fact that you can't protect from everything, right? As much money as you pour into the protection aspect of things, you really have to know that things can happen, holes can be investigated or discovered. Vulnerabilities sometimes are beyond our control. Our processes are sometimes not perfect, and therefore you have to be prepared to detect and to respond to some of these instances. And as part of the recovery process too, this is where your ability to have good backups and so forth go. So insurance, ironically, cares about all of it, right? They're really caring about the data that you have to protect in the beginning, the identify stuff in terms of what data do you have, what pockets of data, how many records do you own, things of that nature, and who specifically is chartered to protect it. They obviously will go through their laundry list in terms of insurance providers. They want to know about what you're protecting, right? How well are you protecting things? What incidents have you had before? But they also want to know about your ability to recover. After all, recovery is like the #1 thing for ransomware. Is if you can recover, you suddenly may not have to, you're certainly less liable or less likely to need to have to pay a ransom or rebuild systems and so forth from scratch. So the whole who, what, where, when thing and testing is a big part of kind of the background, and it certainly relates to the NIST cybersecurity framework. So last week, and I'm not going to rehash it completely, certainly you can, this is off on a video and off on a blog if you need it, but we discussed kind of some top 5 must-have things. When I looked across all the cybersecurity insurance self-assessments and questionnaires and so forth, these are the types of questions I was seeing predominantly, right? None of them were these were all must-haves. They were on every form. Everyone wants to know that you're doing what you have to do to back things up. Oftentimes they range from yes/no statements to, provide some detail. But then I think the things that surprised me the most, as we discussed more last week, was not necessarily these areas, but the specificity, such as, hey, what did you do for the exchange hafnium back in March? Geez, what did we do? As an organization, you might be asking yourself some of that, or what specific steps are you taking relative to ransomware? Things like that. So there was a number of kind of feedback areas, and those were just kind of 6 to 10 areas. I thought not only the specificity, but the focus was on equal parts about protection, detection, and response. So that said, it all relates back to the cybersecurity framework, and without further ado, I guess I would love to introduce some partners that we have, and Jack and Aaron from the Horton Group will kind of discuss in further detail, and I'll advance the slides at their admonishment. Jack, Aaron?
Yeah, thanks so much, Bruce. You can actually head to the next slide. Thank you. So thanks to Bruce and to Tom and to Sam and to Peters and Associates for hosting us and having us join today. I'll keep intros brief as we do have a lot to cover, not a ton of time, but funnily enough, quick story. Of course, today on our cyber call, my internet is on the fritz. It's basically out all morning, no clue what's going on. I realize it's my booster in my home office, so I had to take my laptop, come to the main room to get service. The only caveat there is I have a 14-month-old who's sleeping off just to the side. So if you hear screaming, that's what it is. But I think that just, that's not a covered claim, of course, but I think it lends to the uncertainty, the unpredictability, the randomness of cyber and the world that we live in. So again, my name's Jack Cassell. My partner here is Aaron Turner. Horton Group, we are a top 40 commercial insurance brokerage. We do have international and national capabilities, and we specialize in commercial risk insurance programs, as well as employee benefits, wellness, safety, health. We're headquartered here in Chicago and in Orland Park. And while we are national, I'd say that 60 to 70% of our clients are headquartered somewhere here in the Midwest. Me personally, I've been in the industry for 11 years. I specialize in implementing commercial risk strategies for businesses, consultation, negotiation, and Aaron has been in the business for over 10 years himself, and he is Horton Group's practice leader and chief expert on everything cyber liability and management liability. So that would be, besides cyber, D&O, employment practices, fiduciary crime. So that being said, I will hand it over to Aaron to dig into, what we're seeing in the cyber landscape and, some ideas that might help all you guys. So thanks again. And Aaron, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thanks for the great intro, Jack and Bruce. And definitely thanks to Peters and Associates for having us. We've had some great offline conversations, and now very excited to get those conversations online. And I think one of the things that we had talked about before we jump into everything is how Peters and Associates and the Horton Group are aligned. Bruce brought up the NIST framework, phenomenal resource for groups to really dig in and provide, okay, here's what you can do to best protect yourself. The other thing that Bruce mentioned that we're really promoting as well is actionable items. So actionable items, really today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what's happening in cybersecurity, what's affecting the marketplace. Bruce mentioned some of those items. We'll go into a little more detail. I think the key, the actionable item is going to be really doing the planning, the incident response planning, which, I mean, that's impressive, Bruce. 60 episodes in, I'm sure a lot of those conversations have been about what to do to prevent something bad from happening. So that's
fantastic. I wish I could remember them all, right? You have to go back and look. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that incident too, and wonder what became of that or how many people got impacted by that. But there's just a lot of stories that get told, and it's sometimes good to summarize them and understand. But they certainly fall around a lot of the themes that you're talking about up there: ransomware, business email compromise, and as of recent, coming on the supply chain attacks. So,
yeah, no, definitely, and so typically in the past for our clients, cyber was this great. Hey, answer a few questions, we'll get you a quote. You can buy some financial protection in the event that there's an intrusion or a hack or a system outage, and you can get protect your balance sheet, get some funds back from that. Now, with all of the reported on and unreported on hacks and incidents that are going out there in the marketplace, cyber insurers are under pressure. They're paying out a ton of claims, and cyber insurance is changing. And so we're going to give a little background on why and the how, and then again lead to those actionable items. We could do a whole hour on this stuff, but I'm gonna run through some items pretty quickly. As Bruce noted, the main issue are these supply chain attacks. The threat actors that engage in these types of activities are determining that, well, okay, if we go after a group who is relied upon by not only individuals but a bunch of other businesses, we're going to have more leverage to get them to pay a ransom. And so back at the turn of this year, there was the Solarwinds issue, which was a software supply chain issue, and Solarwinds used by pretty much majority of Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. The way that I describe it is, you know, if your computer's running kind of slow and you hit Control-Alt-Delete and you get the little box that shows you your task manager, how much memory is being used by every little program, and you're like, okay, I'm going to try to knock that one out and see if I can get my speed back. SolarWinds would monitor usage across a system and enhance that for these large organizations. A very useful and ubiquitous software, again, for those large groups. The Russian threat actors attacked the company, inserted malware and code into their software so that when an update was sent out to users, they also updated that code as well, which allowed for the potential of these Russian threat actors to get in and engage in ransomware. Additionally, and Bruce mentioned this one as well, but Microsoft Exchange, and you're getting these, to Bruce's point, you're getting these specific questions on insurance applications. Do you have any SolarWinds vulnerabilities? Are there any outstanding patches or patching that needs to take place? Did you have any exposure to the Microsoft Exchange hack? That one was attributed to the Chinese, and those that use Microsoft email, which is a ton of people, if you hosted your own server, you were vulnerable to the Microsoft Exchange attack, similar to SolarWinds. There was an implant, and when basically the threat actors were able to implant some coding so that they could lay in wait, and when they wanted to, take over your email system. So very, very significant issues and problems could occur. And again, increasing the leverage so that in the event of a ransomware threat, the user would be more likely to pay it. You also had the Colonial Pipeline, which was an attack on the fuel, jet fuel, and automobile fuel systems, the pipeline that delivered gas basically from Texas up to New Jersey and made stops all the way in between. That system was taken down. A significant ransom was paid to get that up and running. You may have also seen the JBS Meats hack. That's a foreign entity, but I think the second largest meat producer processor in the world. All of the groups that are down chain from that meat processor weren't able to get their product for an amount of time until a significant ransom was paid. And then also we had CNA, which is an insurance company, not in the supply chain like a JBS or a Colonial Pipeline, but CNA paid a significant ransom. Their systems were totally taken over. They had to set up separate systems to transact business. Trading partner of ours, CNA is a big trading partner with most, if not all, insurance brokers, and they were significantly and successfully attacked as well. And then most recently, well, partially most recently, over the July 4th holiday, the Kaseya incident, where Kaseya would provide software updates to managed service providers, technology service providers, who would then send those out to their clients. There was an intrusion into an update that was being sent out, and approximately at least 800 groups were potentially at risk for ransomware attacks right there. So these are, again, the most highly publicized recent breaches, but there are countless other incidents, those that don't get reported on, those that are kept private. You combine all of them, and it's really, really putting significant pressure on cyber liability insurance carriers. So what is the result? You've got costs are going up minimum. I mean, 20 to 30% is a minimum. We're thrilled if we get an increase that's below 30% for cyber liability insurance. Sometimes you see it a little bit lower than that, but that's really where we're at. And then 50 to 60% is not out of line. If you're in the healthcare, retail, education sector, if you have claims, that's where you're going to see significant increases in those premiums, and just something that we're telling our clients to be prepared for. We want to tell everybody online here too. Coverages are being restricted as well. So some carriers are reducing the ransomware limits. So what does that mean? You buy $1 million limit, you have coverage to respond to an incident, to hire an incident response coach, to get a forensics group out to support you. You can get a PR firm that can help you if there's any reputational issues. You have attorneys in the event that there is data that's breached. It goes out and someone says, well, you didn't protect my data well enough, we're going to file a lawsuit against you. But right now, what's happening most frequently is that a threat actor, either through phishing or one of these supply chain attacks, gets into a system, is able to encrypt the data, and then provide a message saying, hey, if you want the de-encryption key, if you want the code to unlock your data, you're going to have to pay this ransom. That is something that insurance policies have been doing and continue to do. In some cases, carriers are limiting their ransomware coverage. So they're putting co-insurance. So you have $1 million policy, for example, but for ransomware, that's going to be a $500,000 limit where the carrier pays half of the loss and the insured, the client, pays the other half of the loss. That's something that we're seeing very significantly. Additionally, because of these incidents, you're seeing business outages. The cyber liability insurance policy will typically pay if there is a loss of revenue due to an intrusion or even a system outage. The clock on determining the amount of the loss doesn't start until usually a 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 hour waiting period. So that's like a deductible, a retention. You have a time where you have to wait before your revenue loss starts being calculated. What's happening now is those periods are being extended, 18 hours, 24-hour waiting periods. And so the amounts that are being paid out are reduced. The amounts that are being paid out by the insurance companies are reduced because the waiting periods, the deductibles, are being increased. And then also the dollar retentions or deductibles that are being paid, those are being increased as well. They've been from, 1,000 to 5,000, 15, 25,000, depending on the size of the policy. You can see those upwards of 250,000 or even $1 million in certain circumstances.
So interesting you talk about those windows, because I am seeing on our side, or on the technical side, the forensics firms, while they're busy already, forensics firms that are brought in are also very hesitant to allow us, oftentimes in the recovery business, to recover systems just because the threat may have not been fully mitigated yet. So why put the systems up when the source hasn't been determined? So the window even for finding the issue may be a week, right? May be longer before they're even going to allow some of your first systems. Maybe your domain controllers aren't even allowed to be online for a week, as an example. So it's, meanwhile, obviously the business is down. We've got an example that I'll be providing later, or at least will be provided in the slide deck. We've got a system, a vendor that was breached. They provide a lot of mortgage they're hosting for a mortgage, and they're under a ransomware situation now, and it's been a week, right? Meanwhile, they're losing market share, and other competitors are offering their services for 30% off, or we'll give you a 3-month free trial, and they can just look at their market share eroding over this last week. So.
Yeah, they're real situations for too many groups right now, and it's getting very tough. So yeah, I think just really quickly before jumping in here, the carriers are also, so you fill out an application, give it to your insurance broker goes out, gets some quotes for you. A carrier comes back and says, "Oh yeah, here's a quote, but if you want to bind it, you got to fill out our application, all our questions. We need to review it, we need to check it, and then we'll confirm the offer, the indication quote that we've given you." So not only are you needing to complete applications, but in the majority of situations, it's multiple applications, and then also answering additional questions. The thing that we're talking about right now with our clients is yes, this is an indication quote. It's not a bindable quote. It's only a bindable quote when you've answered all the additional questions that the insurance company has included in their quote. Once that's been signed off by the underwriter, then it's a bindable quote. But until then, it's just a placeholder.
And Aaron, that's one of the areas, obviously, shameless plug, but that's one of the areas we've been helping our customers is fill out those questionnaires, right? Either to your point, the first time when they're just kind of going out for it, or in terms of the binding quotes, finding out information about, what data, what records do they have, what systems do they have, what type of, are they backing things up the way they think they are, matching the answers to having some kind of justifiable means to say yes or no, or provide some overview of the level of protection or incident response plan. Does this count as an incident response plan, and kind of helping them in the judgment process on some of those questionnaires. So I think that's an area where our organization has been helping customers to date. We also have a tool that kind of helps us and aggregates data into certain pockets that are directly related to the forms that you'd see from AIG or Travelers or others that have cybersecurity insurance backends. So.
It's a huge benefit to offer that, just because as a broker we have to completely stay out of that. It's we can explain what the questions mean, and we can set up calls with the underwriters or their technology partners to explain, hey, this is what we're looking for here. But that's something that really needs to be done by the client, but that you're supporting them in that's a big deal. And yeah, and just you had mentioned this, but the areas where they're really looking: multi-factor authentication. Are you doing employee phishing training? Are you limiting privileged access? Are you segregating your backups from your main accessible online systems? Do you have endpoint detection and response, or managed detection and response systems, or other intrusion detection usage? And then are you segregating your billing system from your email system? So if one is compromised, the other isn't necessarily compromised. And then there's requests to turn off remote desktop in a lot of situations, and shutting down open ports. Insurance companies are engaging third parties to perform scans, or they're doing it on their own, coming back, hey, here's some issues here. A lot of that data isn't always right or accurate, but you as the purchaser, we still have to deal with it, and we still have to provide a response there. So I think those are the big issues. What can you do along with the NIST framework? Our one of the things that we really support our clients on is having a cyber incident response plan. We have a template that we go through. I've done a couple webinars for our clients where I go through that template and really describe how it works. It's not the best plan ever, but it really does go through a lot of questions that can come up. A lot of our clients have given us feedback that it's gotten them thinking in a different way about how to prepare prior to them being in the midst of an incident, and how that's helped them sort of from a peace of mind standpoint, but also from an employee preparation standpoint, where they're getting people ready knowing their roles and what they need to do to respond in the event of an incident, depending on what type of incident it is. And along those lines, so you sit down, you figure out who your team is that's going to respond to this, what their roles are, how they're going to do it. The best case scenario is you lock yourself in your boardroom for several hours, a half day, and you practice the response. You can get an incident response coach to support with that. Certainly, insurance brokerage. I bet you guys could help out there too, Bruce. But really practicing that response, who you're going to call, how you're going to engage those vendors is essential, so that when something happens, you have, all right, we're pushing the button, we're starting the process, and here's our first step. And then if you do buy, and then if you do buy a cyber liability insurance policy, and that's the broker's job, is explaining it to you. Hey, here's how it works. Here's what the coverages are. Here's what's not covered. Here are the resources that the policy provides. Here are the approved vendors. Include those in your plan. You don't want to just be calling anybody and incurring bills that aren't going to be reimbursed by the insurance company. I've seen that far too many times to not really emphasize this point. And then along the lines of the requirements that are really coming down the line, are new requirements. What are these minimum security requirements? Really understanding those as early as you can in the process, and knowing, hey, what can I take care of? What's reasonable for me, for our organization, and what would I not be able to do? If you're not going to be able to answer a question affirmatively and the carrier is requiring that answer, we're going to have to move on and look to other carriers. And that happens all the time as well. So really just having a sense of, which questions, which requirements that you can enact and which you can't. And then because of all the increased scrutiny, additional costs, reduced coverages, it's more important than ever to really quantify the extent of your risk and qualify it as well. So, hey, what do we think would be the maximum probable loss? We have tools that we can help our clients determine that and come up with it. But you don't want to be buying too much because it's so expensive now. But you do want to have those minimum protections in place so that you are protecting your balance sheet. And really, we're looking at this as catastrophic protection. You want to be able to keep the business, the doors open, and keep transacting business and stay afloat and not have an incident like this really cause significant damage. And then finally, last is really coordination between the plan, between the practice, between your cyber liability if you have an insurance policy, those security requirements, and the extent of your risk. Making sure everything is coordinated is going to put you in a much better place to respond to those incidents.
Awesome. Aaron, Jack, I can't thank you guys enough for providing some background and context and detail, if you will, to a topic I think that's hitting every organization within our SMB space, and it's just a matter of when our renewals coming up. What are the bringing some context to some of the things that you're seeing, I think is very helpful. So thank you guys very much. Obviously,
and thank you guys as well.
Okay. Yeah. And like always, we'll send this deck. We'll not send the deck. We'll send a link to the blog that will have a recap of all this. I have a few more items that are part of this month. I'll kind of breeze through them, if you will. But I think the goal is nothing. Is probably more in your end to use this as your notification or your starting point for some information, and then from there you can take your own actions. But keep in mind, obviously, we have an incident response checklist that's available to you, the link in the bottom right, for making sure that you're doing all the things properly regarding your incident response plan. IE has been it's kind of going down the line, but IE 11 is being dropped by Microsoft 365 here in August. Want to make sure you are aware of that and have plans in place to take care of that. Vulnerability was just discovered this week. Love those vulnerabilities, right? But this one is impacting Server 2019 as well as a lot of versions of Windows 10, starting at version 1809 and above. This is going to get fixed with patches in August, but if you want to jump on it, they do have some recommendations under that CVE as well as under the link. Another ransomware attack. I guess I wanted to remind everyone that ransomware attacks not only go to servers and workstations, but also can go, in this case, to machines. This is a separate ransomware attack that was discussed about that hosting provider that provides title information on the back end for home mortgages. So if anyone's in transition between homes or buying their first home, this could be impactful to you. But it's a week later, right? And basically the detail is they're unable to provide a definitive restoration timeline. So the clock has ticked already for them, and they're losing market share as other people are offering 3-month free trials and doing title searches. So you can imagine this organization's really kind of in a bind. Obviously at a nation state level, we've had our discussions with Russia as well as with China about attacks on key infrastructure points that kind of Aaron was bringing up there. But ironically, and no one's taking, no law enforcement body is claiming responsibility, but the gang that provided the ransomware for JBS and for the Colonial Pipeline, in other words, they've gone offline. You can't see them anymore. So they were most prolific. Does it mean they're gone? Not sure. I wouldn't say so, but that's kind of a quick update there. There are a couple utilities that are being used as a file sharing service from Solarwinds that also had a separate vulnerability issue. If you use Server U or Serve U, you may want to look into that. If you have Fortinet firewalls of those varieties, you'll want to look at remote code execution vulnerability that occurred this month. And then SonicWall, in a kind of a weird message, warned of some imminent ransomware, meaning this is probably coming up. And it's specifically on some older devices that are kind of end of life, but thought the quote was kind of good, and I'll leave it there. So we always leave off with new blogs that have been produced by us. We try to be a thought leader in this space, as well as some of our events, which again, you'll find all of these in the blog posting that gets sent to you as a thank you from attending or even registering. So thank you all very much. And again, special thanks to Jack and Aaron from the Horton Group for providing context on this month in cyber. So that's it. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bruce. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Bruce. And if, as Aaron mentioned, we could talk about this stuff for well over an hour. So, we're here to support you. We're here to help. And if you need any, it's about doing due diligence in this marketplace. So we're here to help you guys if anybody needs assistance with this. So please feel free to reach out.
Great. I do see a question out there for myself. I'll take it offline with the question. So thank you very much, all.